Good afternoon. I want to welcome everyone to Springfield in the Glenwood district. It is really my great pleasure to welcome the Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg. Rarely has someone created so much excitement about the things that are important to cities. Everything from infrastructure and just the act of local governance. One of the things I appreciated about his work was the just simple joy that he brings to it, the joy in what makes our cities run. And it is worth noting how much of an inspiration that is to everything from public works officials to city leaders to the people that work in our city halls. A huge thank you goes to our Congressman, Peter DeFazio, for his tremendous long-term dedication to our entire community. We're so proud of the work that you continue to do on our behalf, the long hours of fighting for our community, and most of all, I'm proud that you make Springfield your home. A special thank you for introducing the INVEST Act that will modernize our roads, our bridges, transit, rail, and our drinking infrastructure. The bill is transformative in the way the United States views infrastructure into the future. And as we all know, infrastructure is about partnerships. And when we get the infrastructure right, economic development and livability continues to grow. It was fantastic to tour the LTD electric bus and participate in today's event. And it's so inspiring to see their continued role in modernizing the work around Franklin. One of the core pillars to a healthy community is accessible and well-functioning transit. For many in our community, public transportation provides independence in a way simply to access their lives, whether that's school, jobs, recreation. And LTD is full of people that have dedicated a lifetime of service to providing public transportation and connecting to the world around them. We stand right now near Franklin Boulevard in Glenwood. It really is a crossroads of our region. Really, when I think about Franklin Boulevard, I think about the fact that it's a backbone in the metropolitan area. It connects Springfield and Eugene's downtowns. It's the home of urban renewal districts. It connects us to national markets along the I-5 corridor. We have a community college to the south of here, and also it represents a gateway to rural Lane County and the goods that they provide. A transformation of Franklin Boulevard to a safe, modern, multimodal corridor will have a catalytic effect on Oregon's second biggest metropolitan area. Again, when we get the transportation and infrastructure right, economic growth follows. It will save time, travel costs, and improve our economy's resilience in our environment. Thank you to our federal delegation for the continued focus on infrastructure improvements in this area. They understand the immediate and impactful role of transportation and infrastructure into our quality of life. Their concentrated efforts on behalf of us are tireless and what our communities deserve. And I really want to thank my partner in crime, my partner, Lucy Vinnis, who constantly shows up, to those events. Welcome, Mayor Vinnis.
Mayor Van Gordon. Thank you, Secretary Buttigieg, for visiting the Eugene-Springfield area and touring our transportation systems. We are excited to have you with us today. Once a mayor, always a mayor, and I'm very thankful to have your understanding of local communities coming through in federal transportation policies. And thank you, Chairman DeFazio, for your commitment to smart transportation investments both here locally and as sound federal policy. Your dedication to Southwest Oregon and leadership in DC has brought millions of dollars of critical investments to our region, and the priorities I share today will all carry the imprint of your leadership. Eugene is a community that prioritizes transportation choices, including walking, biking, and taking the bus. Our focus on safe, multimodal investments is key to meeting our aggressive climate goals and making equitable public investments that work for all in our community. Federal funding has been instrumental in helping us reach these goals, such as the new 13th Avenue Protected Bikeway, which benefited from federal funding programs including the Surface Transportation Block Grant and Federal Transportation Safety Funds. However, like many communities across the country, we are looking to our federal partners to help us realize our local vision and planning. Increased funding with greater flexibility distributed through metropolitan planning organizations, such as Chairman DeFazio proposed in the Invest in America Act and included in the President's American Jobs Plan, will enable cities to build projects that create livable streets more quickly, meet our climate targets, and reach the goal of zero traffic fatalities. We are proud of our partnership with Lane Transit District to build a regional bus rapid transit system. This system is key to implementing our transit-oriented development goals, linking transportation choices with jobs, affordable housing, and reductions in greenhouse gases. Integral to this work is redesigning Franklin Boulevard. As you experienced, this stretch of road is currently a high-speed, auto-oriented arterial that we are transforming to a much safer and more climate-friendly street. Franklin is the eastern entry to town, the gateway to the University of Oregon, and fronts the $1 billion Knight campus for accelerating scientific impact. The proposed design will allow increased housing options, new commercial investments, and enhance the connection to the Willamette River using efficient transit, setback sidewalks, and protected bikeways. In closing, Eugene serves as a national model of what a mid-sized city can do for active mode transportation investments. We are very appreciative of the critical support from Chairman DeFazio, the Biden administration, and the committed individuals who continue to push for greater investments that will build an equitable and climate-smart future. Thank you. And I am pleased now to invite Aurora Jackson, Lane Transit District General Manager, to the podium.
Thank you. Thank you, mayors, and thank you all for coming here today. LTD is fortunate to have great partners in Eugene, Springfield, and Lane County. I want to begin by thanking Chairman Peter DeFazio for his leadership and support of LTD. Over the years, the chairman has brought LTD millions of dollars of support to provide better transportation services. Without his leadership and support of our efforts, LTD would not be the first agency in the nation to build and operate a bus rapid transit system. We would not have the resources to expand our downtown station in Eugene. We wouldn't have the federal funding needed to fulfill our climate action plan, which calls for LTD to transition to a fully energy fleet by 2035. We already have 11 battery electric buses in service, with 19 more in production, which are scheduled to arrive next year. For that and so much more, on behalf of LTD Board of Directors, all of our employees and our community, I want to thank Chairman Peter DeFazio. It is an honor for LTD to welcome Secretary Buttigieg to Lane County and to highlight our commitment to safe, reliable, and clean energy transportation services. Our ridership ranks in the top 25 nationally in per capita transit ridership. That is a reflection of the vision and leadership of this community, who took bold steps to improve accessibility and quality of transit. And it is a credit to Chairman DeFazio's leadership in Congress to expand funding for transit services and facilities. But now we have new challenges. Wildfires and last week extreme heat underscore a growing climate crisis that transit plays a role in solving. Current federal policy and funding aren't enough to meet the needs of our community or the nation to battle these crises. For example, within the next 2 years, over half of LTD's buses will have reached the end of their useful life, with the majority of them operating 20 years of service. Limited funding exists to improve roadways and allow buses to move faster and more reliably. And as we at LTD electrify our fleet and transition to our new service model, we need the resources to train and grow our union workforce to maintain and operate the transit system of the future. Chairman DeFazio recently passed his Invest in America Act, which sets a high standard for transit funding and ensures the bipartisan infrastructure framework carries transit funding at historic levels. We are fortunate to have him working with Secretary Buttigieg and President Biden to advocate for his priorities in the bipartisan infrastructure framework that, when signed, will represent America's largest transit investment in history. We are proud to support Chairman DeFazio and President Biden to work for infrastructure improvements. Our community, our customers, and our climate rely upon their success. It is my honor now to turn the podium over to Chairman Peter DeFazio.
Well, thanks, AJ. Thank you all for being here today. I've been saying for some time, we need to move. We're beyond the 20th, and in some cases, in terms of our infrastructure, 19th century. We actually have critical portions of our infrastructure built. A rail tunnel under Baltimore when Ulysses S. Grant was president that is going to fail in the not-too-distant future and cut off rail traffic in the Northeast. Here we have the Columbia River crossing. We have failed bridges, pavement issues all over the place. And for too long, the federal government has been absent as a full partner. And it's my intention with my bill and the numbers in my bill for the federal government to fully partner with states, counties, and cities of all sizes in order that they can meet their objectives. It's not going to be Eisenhower 8.0. This is the 21st century. The Eisenhower plan was built for the existential threat of the time. Invasion by Russia so we could move troops and equipment quickly to the coasts, or nuclear war so we could evacuate our cities. We have a new existential threat, and that's climate change. It's the 21st century. We just went through the heat dome here in the Pacific Northwest. We have to deal seriously with this. Transportation is the single largest emitter of carbon pollution in the United States of America. But the great news is we can deal with that, and in dealing with that, we can create millions of good-paying jobs. We are going to have the strongest Buy America requirements of any part of the federal government. I only wish the Pentagon would follow our lead. We're going to close the last two loopholes that are allowing the Chinese to come in and unfairly try and take over rail and take over bus. LTD originally ordered some buses from BYD, a Chinese communist government company based in California. They were crap, and they got sent back. And we now have buses that were made here in the United States of America, electric buses. That's the future. And the secretary and I drove one today. You can comment on our driving later. But I mean, it's a sweet ride. It is so different than your diesel buses. I got to drive a semi-tractor trailer just about a month ago. I tried to bring my Republican colleagues along on the climate change provisions. They say, that doesn't belong in a transportation bill. I said, yeah, it does, because we've got to deal with climate change. So I said, let's make the business case. I had Fred Smith from FedEx, rock-ribbed, right-wing Republican, come in and say, the future's electric. I'm going electric, all electric. My semis, everything is going to be electric. GM is going electric. The world is going electric. Are we going to be left behind again? Are we going to let the Chinese take the initiative? No. With this bill, we won't. We are going to lead the world once again, and we're going to start exporting these goods to the rest of the world and put a lot more Americans back to work in manufacturing made in America, electric buses, streetcars, and the devices that power them. So this is a new era, a new time, and we have a great opportunity. With this president and with this secretary, this is a unique opportunity. He'll talk about that in a minute. It's generational, but just a couple other quick points. We were up in Corvallis, and we were on a highway that has pretty much divided the community, and unfortunately, a young girl was just recently killed there trying to cross the street. And in too many places around the country in the automobile era, we designed everything for throughput of automobiles and no thought to pedestrians, no thought to cycling or alternative modes. Just move the traffic as quickly as possible. We divided communities of color, and that was done in many places intentionally in low-income neighborhoods. There is a major new component in my bill to restore those neighborhoods, reconnect those neighborhoods. We can move that traffic. We can move it in different ways, 21st century ways, things like complete streets like Secretary Buttigieg did when he was mayor. Those things will work. We can still have traffic, but we can have safe for cycling and pedestrians and others. And we can also restore social equity. So this is a unique moment. It's, to tell the truth, I've been waiting for this for a very, very long time. I've spent my whole career in Congress on this committee, and this is the time. Bring America into the 21st century. You know, we used to be number one. We were the envy of the world post-World War II, the 60s and into the 70s with our transportation network. We're now number 14 in the world, and we're dropping like a rock. Our competitors know that these investments make them more efficient, move goods and people more efficiently, give a better quality of life, and create one heck of a lot of jobs. It's time we brought that home here. Thank you very much. With that, Secretary Pete Buttigieg, a great guy.
Well, thank you. Good afternoon. It would be hard to say it any better than Chair DeFazio just did, but I want to first thank all of you for joining us. I want to thank the essential workers in transit, transportation, and all of the related trades who have kept our country going. We're so glad to spend some time with you earlier today. I want to thank Mayor Vennis and Mayor Van Gordon for their leadership. It's never been a more demanding time to be a mayor, and it's great to see local leaders with a vision for where our country is going to go from here, one community at a time, because this is where the rubber literally meets the road, as we got to experience a little bit ago. And I'm so appreciative of General Manager Jackson, LTD Board President Vargas, and LTD as a whole for hosting us here. And of course, I want to thank Chair DeFazio, first of all, for encouraging me from our very first conversation to come here, which I'm especially glad to do on a beautiful day like this, but also for his leadership, which we'll have more to say about in a moment. But I'm so glad to be here. We've spent time in Springfield, Eugene today, Tracktown, USA, I'm told, and of course running is the original mode of transportation and one we shouldn't overlook as we think about all of the others. You know, this is also a place that is known for support for bicycle commuting and bicycle recreation, something that's especially important as we consider the future of commuting in so many of our cities. And here we got to see some of the first zero-emission electric buses that LTD is bringing online to replace diesel buses, which is so good for our communities in so many ways. It's, of course, going to make the air cleaner here in Lane County. It's going to reduce carbon emissions around the world. And it's coming at a moment when Oregon, unfortunately, like so many other places in the world, has reminded us of what's at stake in the climate crisis. Things that we had talked about as maybe going to happen in the middle of this century that instead happened last week. Things that are only going to accelerate and become more and more damaging if we let them. Fires raging as we speak, people being pushed from their homes, Amtrak service cut off between Oregon and California, and this on the heels, of course, of last week's terrible fires. Just weeks ago, seeing record-breaking heat taking lives, seeing I-5 literally buckling, seeing the suspension of MAX, the transit in Portland, because cables were at risk of melting in the heat. And we've seen versions of this across the country. Gulf Coast flooding that halted rail service after Hurricane Harvey, terrible floods in Michigan, close to where I'm from, snow in Texas, of all places. I got to see the 110-year-old walls of the Hudson River tunnels that are corroded partly because of the seawater that came through Superstorm Sandy. So the climate crisis isn't just coming, it's upon us. And President Biden, Vice President Harris, and the rest of the administration view it as a defining challenge of our time, which is why we want this community and every community to know that we are going to support you through it and do everything we can to tackle the climate crisis together. Now, this isn't just about what can be lost if we allow the status quo to proceed. It's about what can be gained if we get this right, which is the job creation that we could do right in this country. The buses that we got to see, manufactured in Alabama with electric batteries made in Michigan. And jobs being created up and down the supply chain. And by the way, in the President's American Jobs Plan, the majority of jobs created are available whether you have a college degree or not. A blue-collar vision for the future of our economy. Now, we're also focused on safety. As Chair DeFazio said earlier, we were in Corvallis this morning, and he took me to Highway 99, where I learned about the absolutely tragic crashes that have occurred on that stretch, and spoke with local and state leaders about how to do something about it. We saw safety improvements that are being installed as we speak, but there's so much more to do. Every one of us knows somebody who lost their life in a traffic crash. And just think about that for a minute, that every one of us has come to view that as normal, as though we were in a war, that you will lose people you know and care about, as if that were just the cost of doing business in having modern transportation, and that just isn't true. In the U.S., we've seen over 35,000 roadway deaths each year since 2015, but it doesn't have to be that way. And these kinds of tragedies, we have been shown, can be prevented by successful policies like Vision Zero, reducing traffic deaths. So just in the few hours I've been able to be on the ground here, we have seen safety, equity, climate, job creation, and the future competitiveness of this country all at stake in transportation choices, which brings us to the transformational moment that we're in right now. We need a transformational investment in infrastructure to last a generation. And Chair DeFazio has done so much to help deliver that. The House of Representatives recently passed his Invest in America Act, a huge and historic step forward. He's a fierce leader, as fierce a leader for smart transportation policies I've ever seen. Spending time with him informally resembles the experience, if you can imagine it, of having a beer with an encyclopedia of transportation. But it is not just the knowledge, it's the determination he has brought through many administrations, always at the forefront of efforts to move our country toward a system that is safer for people, better for our climate, more equitable, and more accessible, which is why we're so glad that he is working with the White House, working with me, and working with the Senate to get a historic infrastructure plan over the finish line. So the next few days and weeks are going to be critical, but here's what we know. Action will address the climate change by creating a network of over 500,000 electric vehicle chargers across the country, giving people the option to leave their cars at home, making the biggest investment in public transit in our country's history, including billions to electrify transit buses like the leaders here at LTD are doing already. It's got the largest investment in passenger rail since Amtrak was created in the first place. Investing $50 billion to make our infrastructure more resilient to the climate change that we know is coming our way no matter how good we get at improving our energy sources. And it makes the largest single investment in energy transmission in the history of the country. But it's also got over $10 billion for transportation safety, nearly half of which will go to road safety, so that people can walk or use a wheelchair or bike safely and don't have to bring 2 tons of metal with them everywhere they're going. And as we said earlier, it's going to create millions of good-paying jobs, like careers building and maintaining the electric buses that we see here, laying those new train lines and transmission lines, upgrading water pipes, and so much more. There's one more thing, perhaps even deeper, that I think might be at stake right now, and that is democracy. Because we're in a moment where questions are actually being raised about which system can best deliver for citizens. This seems to happen every 50 to 100 years, and we're in a moment like that. Would we be better off, some say, with a command and control sort of system? Or do democratic mechanisms with democratic values still do the best job of delivering concrete results for citizens? And this is our chance to prove it. This is our chance to demonstrate that people will better be able to get to where they need to be thanks to the processes that we are going through as we speak to empower citizens and empower communities, empower leaders like the ones we spent time with today to seek that better future. So that's why we're so thankful to be here and really appreciate everything that's gone into this visit. Thank you again, and happy to take some questions.
Any questions?
Hi there. I'm Erin with the Chronicle, and I would like to know how these initiatives will impact more rural areas in Lane County, like Crestwell, Cottage Grove, Pleasant Hill, things like that.
actually, this bill is the most sensitive surface transportation bill to rural needs in the history of the United States. You know, I mean, I suppose you could say the first highway program served rural America because we built freeways through them. But this one recognizes the unique needs of rural areas. There's a new program for rural transit, small cities, rural areas that lack transit. A lot of people are aging in place. They need a way to get into town or get to the doctor and do that. I recognize that need. I have a very large district, and a lot of it is rural. There's a new rural bridge program, a off-system bridge program, where, you know, a major emphasis in this bill is the national highway system and the 47,000 bridges there that need repair or replacement. But we have way more than that in all probability of local bridges that are weight limited or about to fail. So I'm creating a new funded program to help counties deal with their rural bridge programs. And then obviously the state of good repair, which is the focus of the whole bill, will benefit the whole state, and in particular a lot of rural areas, because I think a lot of the focus on where the state of Oregon and other states have been spending their money has been in the largest metropolitan areas and not necessarily taking into account the needs of the rural areas, and with the emphasis that they have to do state of good repair everywhere in the state, not just in the urban areas. So it will be the best bill ever for rural if I can get the Senate to agree to those provisions. I'm hopeful they will, because a lot of the Senate is run by Republicans from very rural states. What a shy group of reporters. All right.
Mr. Secretary, what's your reaction to driving the bus? What surprised you?
Oh yeah, I didn't even mention the experience that we had driving the bus. Of course, one thing is that, and a few of us were remarking on it, you know, we just came to assume that a bus means diesel, smoke, and noise. And it was a bus with a driver and all of the things you would expect a bus to have, except for the diesel, the smoke, and the noise. It was quiet. It was clean. Admittedly, a little more challenging to drive also because of how the braking works, but again, there's a phenomenal and highly trained and very safe workforce here that knows what they're doing, even to the point that they could explain to us on our safe closed course how to get through that little test drive. But when you add that up across all the buses in Lane County, all the buses in the United States, and you think about people who live on corridors where there are a lot of buses, and for that matter, trucks and cars, the particulate matter that they're not going to be inhaling, that's not going to be giving them asthma in a world where we make those conversions like what are happening here. That's the thing I think about most, actually, is the health effect. And that actually brings me to just one. There's not much I could add to the chair's remarks on the rural front, but I do want to mention one thing. To the extent that this package will make it easier for Americans to take advantage of electric vehicles, I think it has been underreported how important that is, perhaps especially to rural areas. If you're in a rural area, you drive more, you burn more gas, you're going to save more money if you have an electric vehicle. And if we can make sure that it is incentivized or priced so it's not a luxury item, then I think very few Americans have more to gain from going electric than those who live in rural communities.
I would just like to say thank you for the border carrier accountability provision in the bill. Thank you for that.
All right. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it for having you stand. Most of you haven't. You were in the shade. Anyway, thanks for being here.